The studio lights were already warming up when Ibrahim Traoré entered. Calm, tall, and composed. No entourage, no flashy suit, just a quiet strength in his eyes. Joe Rogan stood to greet him, a bit surprised by Traoré's aura. The podcast team thought it would be a typical episode. Controversial maybe, but nothing out of the ordinary. But there was something different about today. Outside, a storm brewed over Los Angeles. Inside, the room had an odd stillness, as if it knew something was about to break. Joe opened with a laugh, trying to set a light tone. "So, Captain, what brings a revolutionary from West Africa to this side of the world?" Traoré smiled softly. "Maybe. The world is ready to hear what it's never wanted to." There was a pause. Joe raised an eyebrow. A producer behind the glass flinched slightly, sensing the weight behind those words. What no one knew was that Traoré wasn't just here to talk. He was here to unravel something. And it would begin with a question that would shake the internet for weeks. And in less than 20 minutes, Joe Rogan would be screaming. 15 minutes into the episode, everything still seemed calm. Joe asked his usual big-picture questions: politics, history, power. Traoré answered like a man who had walked through fire and come out cleaner than the smoke. Then it happened. Joe leaned back, casually sipping his coffee, and said, "But isn't Africa still, kind of stuck?" The silence was immediate. Traoré didn't blink. He didn't look angry, but his entire presence changed. The smile faded. The calm sharpened. He leaned forward just slightly, his voice steady. "Joe," he said, "do you know what it's like to watch your people die with cameras pointed at them, but no headlines? To watch your leaders get puppeted by banks from across the ocean while your children eat dust?" Joe shifted uncomfortably. The producers sat up. "I'm not here to talk about poverty," Traoré continued. "I'm here to ask why the world is comfortable watching Africa bleed while calling it backward." Joe tried to interrupt, but Traoré raised a hand, not in arrogance, but with quiet control. And then he said the line that would go viral. "If Africa is poor, why is it still making the world rich?" Joe's jaw dropped. Viewers wouldn't breathe for the next 10 minutes. The air inside the studio changed. Joe tried to recover his usual edge, throwing out facts and statistics, but his voice cracked a little. It wasn't just what Traoré said. It was how he said it. Like a man who had buried brothers. Like a man who'd seen Western deals signed in blood. "Are you saying the West steals from Africa?" Joe challenged. "I'm saying it eats from Africa's table, then chains the cook." Joe laughed nervously. "That's dramatic." "Is it?" Traoré replied. "When we ask for dignity, we're called dangerous. When we say no to exploitation, we're sanctioned. When I fight for my people, I'm called a dictator." The comment section during the live stream exploded. People were crying, others were furious. Some American viewers started Googling Burkina Faso for the first time in their lives. The truth hit hard. Joe looked to his crew for backup. One producer whispered, "This is going viral. Let him speak." And Traoré did. He began telling a story about a 9-year-old boy from Burkina Faso. A boy who was shot during a gold mine raid run by a foreign company. A boy whose mother still waited for justice. The boy's name? Musa. And suddenly, the entire studio went silent. The camera zoomed in slightly as Traoré spoke about Musa. "He wasn't a soldier," Traoré said. "He didn't carry a weapon. He just played near the mine. Every evening he'd sit by the fence and wait for his father to return. But one evening, foreign guards opened fire." Joe Rogan leaned forward. "Wait, on a child?" Traoré nodded, pain flickering across his eyes. The bullets were meant to scare off protesters, but Musa was in the way. The studio was frozen. Even Joe's crew, usually busy with sound checks and camera angles, had stopped everything. Traoré continued, voice almost a whisper. His shoes were still warm when his mother picked them up. The blood hadn't dried. Joe's usual toughness faltered. He died over gold that never touched his country, Traoré said. It went straight to Switzerland. Silence. Then Traoré pulled something from his pocket. A small folded note. Faded. Torn. Moose's mother gave me this. She told me to read it one day, when the world was listening. He looked at the mic. Maybe. That day is today. Joe was speechless. The internet. Breaking. No one knew what was written in the note yet. But hearts were already shattering. Traoré held the note like it was glass. With shaking hands, he unfolded it slowly. Joe leaned in, visibly moved. Traoré began to read. To whoever reads this, if my boy's death makes one man in power stop stealing, if it makes one mother's voice heard, then my son did not die for nothing. He died like our gold, taken without a name. The room was airless. Joe's voice was unusually soft. How do you carry this? Traoré answered. I carry it because the world refuses to. A deep, painful silence hung in the room. And then Traoré looked Joe in the eye. You asked why I came here. It's because I want the West to hear the things they're too used to ignoring. Not from books, not from headlines, from the people they've silenced. Joe rubbed his face. His eyes were glassy. He tried to reset but couldn't find the words. Even the camera operator had tears in her eyes. Joe finally whispered, This is going to change everything. Traoré nodded. That's the plan. And as the live stream comments poured in, thousands of people started sharing the name Musa. Some even changed their profile pictures to gold dust. Joe tried to shift the conversation, maybe to something lighter, but the emotional weight wouldn't let him. So, are you saying we're all guilty? Joe asked, frustration creeping in. Traoré didn't flinch. I'm saying you benefit. That's different from guilt. But silence is a choice. Joe slammed his hand on the table. I've had presidents, scientists, and billionaires on this podcast. No one's ever said this. Traoré replied gently. That's the problem. And just like that, Joe snapped. He stood up, knocking over his chair. You come here and act like I'm the enemy. No, Traoré said, rising slowly. You are not the enemy, but you have the microphone. And people like me, we only get one chance to speak before they shut the cameras off. The crew panicked. One producer mouthed, Cut it. But Joe raised his hand. No, let it roll. And then, in a moment no one could predict, Joe's voice cracked. He looked at Traoré and he said, I don't know what to do with this, but I think you're right. The live stream's chat exploded. This is history. I'm sobbing. Someone protect Ibrahim Traoré. And in the shadows of the studio, a new chapter in truth was just beginning. After a long pause, Joe asked quietly, Why now? Why here? Traoré sat down again, his eyes heavy. Because I've been warned I might not get another chance. Joe stared. Warned? Traoré nodded slowly. Before I left Burkina Faso, my advisors begged me not to come to America. They said there were quiet threats, whispers, that if I speak too loudly, I might not return. The studio went cold. Joe leaned in, concerned now. What kind of threats? Traoré didn't blink. The kind that never get reported, the kind that come wrapped in smiling diplomacy and trade deals, the kind that call you a problem just for telling the truth. The weight of his words was unbearable. And still, Traoré said, voice cracking for the first time, I came. Because if I don't speak now, maybe Musa becomes just another ghost in the dust. And I can't let that happen. The live stream was drowning in comments. I'm crying so hard. This is bravery. Protect this man at all costs." Joe looked down at his mic, ashamed. And for once he had no jokes, no questions, only silence. Traoré then asked Joe a question that flipped the entire episode. "Do you know what Burkina Faso exports the most?" Joe thought for a second. "Gold, right?" "Yes, gold. We're the fourth largest gold producer in Africa. Yet, we are also one of the poorest nations on earth." Joe looked puzzled. Then Traoré dropped the bomb. "Last year, a foreign company made $3 billion from our soil. They left us with $14 million. You know how many children that could have educated, fed, saved?" Joe's face turned pale. "We didn't sell a product," Traoré continued. "We sold our blood." He then pulled out a contract, blurred on camera, but clearly aged and torn. This was signed by one of our former leaders. He was flown to a luxury resort. He signed it after a dinner with foreign executives. He died 3 months later. Heart attack. No investigation. Joe's eyes widened. Traoré looked down. "I kept this in my pocket since I became president, to remind me that even smiling men in suits can sell out entire nations." The chat section was now flooding with heartbreak. "This is what the news hides. Why aren't we taught this in school?" And then came the moment that broke Joe's voice. "My God, this isn't a podcast anymore, this is a warning." Suddenly Traoré reached for his phone and played a voice recording. Scratchy, soft, full of static. A woman's voice, crying. "I don't want revenge. I just want my child to be remembered. Please don't forget Musa." Joe covered his face with his hands. Everyone in the room was frozen. Traoré's voice was barely above a whisper. "She lives in a clay house, no electricity, no clean water. But she had the strength to send her pain across oceans." He looked directly at the camera. "Tell me who is really powerful." Joe's eyes were red now. "She gave me that voice note 3 nights before I came here," Traoré said. "She said, 'Play it when you know people are finally listening.'" Then he added something that hit like lightning. "Do you know the last time she heard her son laugh? It was when he was pretending to be a pilot. He said he wanted to fly to America." A long, unbearable pause followed. Joe's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I don't even know what I'm apologizing for." Traoré looked at him and said gently, "Maybe just for not listening sooner." Just as Traoré finished playing the mother's voice note, something unexpected happened. The studio phone rang. Joe's team never lets calls come through during a recording, but this time the call forced itself in. A producer picked up, whispering quickly. His face went pale. Joe turned toward him. "What's wrong?" The producer hesitated, then whispered, "We're being told to cut the feed." Joe stood up. "Who?" "Someone from a government agency. They said this content is considered politically destabilizing." The tension in the room snapped like a whip. Traoré didn't flinch. "I knew this might happen." Joe was stunned. "Wait, this is America. This is my podcast. No one tells us what to air." The producer looked terrified. "They said if we don't stop it, we'll be flagged and blacklisted." Joe looked at Traoré, rage building in his voice. "This is exactly what you meant, isn't it?" Traoré nodded. "You don't control the microphone, Joe. You only thought you did." The chat was now going wild. "They're trying to silence him. Do not stop this. We're witnessing the truth and they can't handle it." But Traoré calmly reached for his water and whispered, "Let them try." As the tension soared, Traoré reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn envelope. It was sealed, but the edges were torn from years of being handled. Joe asked softly, "What's that?" Traoré looked down at it. "A letter from my brother." Joe blinked. "I didn't know you had a brother." "I don't," Traoré replied. "Not anymore." The room fell into silence. "He was killed in a protest," shot by soldiers trained by foreign forces. He wasn't even political. He just held a sign that said, "Africa is not for sale." Joe swallowed hard. Traoré continued, "The day before he died, he left this letter in my bag. I never opened it. I couldn't. But before flying here, I did." He opened the envelope on the table. His hands shook slightly, and then he read aloud, "If they take me, keep going. Don't become them. Speak with fire, but burn with love. And if you ever get the chance to speak to the world, make them hear us." Joe covered his mouth. The crew wiped their eyes. "His name was Mamadou," Traoré said quietly. "He wasn't just my brother, he was my compass." And in that moment, everyone watching realized Ibrahim Traoré was carrying every broken voice inside him. A new notification popped up on the studio monitor. "Emergency alert. Feed may be disrupted." The live stream began to glitch. Viewers panicked in the chat. "They're trying to shut it down. Someone record this." Joe stood and walked off screen, whispering urgently into his phone. He came back pale. "Traoré, there's someone parked outside. Black SUV, no plates." Traoré didn't move. "I told you. They don't need to knock." Joe snapped at the crew. "Keep rolling. If this gets taken down, we'll upload it again. I don't care if we get shut down. We're finishing this." But Traoré smiled softly. "Joe, it's okay. I didn't come here to be safe. I came here to speak." He looked into the camera with eyes that carried centuries of silence. To the young boy watching this from a crowded classroom in Nigeria, to the girl walking 5 miles for water in Niger, to the mother burying her child because medicine is too expensive, you are not forgotten. Joe's voice cracked. "They'll come after you." Traoré leaned closer to the mic, his voice steady, his heart unshaken. "Let them come, but let the world remember what I said before they tried to silence me." The glitching intensified. First, the comments froze, then the audio crackled, then total blackout. The live stream was gone. Viewers were thrown into darkness, millions staring at a blank screen, refreshing desperately. Back in the studio, chaos. Joe shouted, "What happened?" A tech guy yelled, "We've been disconnected from the platform. Force override. It's not on our end." Traoré closed his eyes. "I expected this." Joe was shaking now. They really did it. They cut us. But Traoré leaned forward, calm as ever. "Let them cut wires. They can't cut truth." The crew had recorded everything, but no one dared say what they were all thinking. Would they be safe if they published it again? Then something happened no one expected. Traoré's voice broke. He turned away from the mic, covered his eyes, and for the first time since the episode began, he cried. Not like a leader, like a brother, a son, a father. "I carried so many names here," he whispered, choking. "I wanted the world to say them. Just once." Joe walked over slowly, rested a hand on his shoulder. "Ibrahim," he said softly, "the world will hear you." But both men knew. They'd just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The podcast episode was gone from the platform, wiped clean, no trace. But Joe wasn't done. He turned to his team. "I want that raw footage backed up in 5 places, uploaded to underground servers, decentralized, encrypted. I don't care what it takes. The world must see this." Within hours, anonymous mirror uploads started popping up. First on Telegram, then private sites, then Twitter, and then the dam broke. The hashtag #LetIbrahimSpeak began trending worldwide. African youth flooded social media. Mothers in rural villages were shown the clip on borrowed phones. Veterans, students, even celebrities began reposting the footage. It was unstoppable. Joe and Traoré watched from a private room, exhausted, silent. Then came the message that would shatter them both. A direct text to Joe Rogan's phone from a number he didn't recognize. "He will not leave America alive if you keep this up." Joe showed it to Traoré. Traoré didn't look afraid. He simply said, "Then I will speak louder, because what they fear most is a man without fear." Joe whispered, "You're changing the world." Traoré shook his head. "They are. I'm just the echo." And the world was finally listening. Joe Rogan's inbox was flooded with thousands of messages. One stood out, a voice note from a U.S. Army veteran who had served in West Africa. He played it aloud in the room. "I was stationed near a mine you spoke of. We were told we were protecting democracy, but we were protecting pipelines and profit. I watched a child walk barefoot past armed guards. We didn't know his name, until now. His name was Musa, and I can't sleep anymore." Joe sat down, face in his hands. He didn't speak, not for minutes. Traoré placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "This is why I came, Joe." And then Joe, famous for his sharp wit, his stone exterior, his defiance, began to cry. Not quietly. He sobbed. "This whole time I thought I was asking the hard questions," Joe said, "but I never asked the right ones." Traoré looked into the camera again. "To those watching, don't let Musa's name fade. Say it, share it, let it live." And just then, Joe whispered the words that would shake every viewer. "We're not the voice of the voiceless. We're the noise that drowned them out." And with that, the world finally fell silent, just to hear one man speak. The next morning, Traoré stood by the window of a hidden apartment in Los Angeles. The sun rose slowly over the city, but the world felt heavier. The clip had gone viral. But so had the threats. Journalists were calling it the most dangerous interview of the decade. Some Western leaders had already released statements denying everything. But the truth was out, and it couldn't be put back in the box. Joe and Traoré sat together in silence. Joe finally broke it. "I need to ask, do you regret it?" Traoré didn't answer at first. Then he pulled out a folded piece of paper, not the letter from his brother, not Musa's mother's note. This was something else. He unfolded it gently. It was a list, a long one, handwritten. Joe leaned in. "What is this?" Traoré answered softly. "Names, children buried in silence, mothers who never saw justice, villages erased from contracts. Every one of them gave me a reason to speak." Joe looked down the list. There were dozens. At the bottom was one final name, Musa, and beside it, written in faded ink, "He dreamed of flying. I will carry him." Joe began crying again, quiet but uncontrollable. That night, Joe went live again, not with guests, not with cameras, just him. He sat in silence for a long time before speaking. And then, he said the sentence that would go down in podcast history. "America just got called out by a man the media never wanted you to meet, and I've never been prouder to lose control of my own show." The internet exploded. Millions tuned in within minutes. Celebrities reposted it. World leaders avoided it. Joe continued, "I was warned not to air this. We were told to shut up, but we won't. I won't. Because if men like Ibrahim Traoré are silenced, then what hope is left for the rest of us?" He paused. His voice cracked while reading a letter from a grieving mother. Mine cracked when I realized I helped build a wall of ignorance. He ended with one final, shattering line. "If you still think Africa is poor, watch that interview again. You might realize it's the rest of us who are starving for truth." Then he walked off camera. The screen faded to black, and in white letters, a single sentence appeared. "Say his name. Say Musa." 2 weeks later, Ibrahim Traoré landed safely in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. Thousands flooded the airport, waiting, cheering, weeping. But he didn't go home right away. He went to a small clay house. The door opened. Musa's mother stood there, eyes swollen with tears, but smiling. Traoré walked up to her and gently placed something in her hand. It was a worn pair of shoes, cleaned, framed. Musa's name was spoken across the world, he said, voice trembling. He's not forgotten anymore. The woman didn't speak. She just placed a hand over her heart and nodded. Then Traoré bent down and hugged her, tight, like a son returning home. A drone shot pulled away from the house as the crowd behind them chanted one name, Musa. Then the screen faded out. But before it went black completely, one last message appeared. If this story moved you to tears, you're not alone. Like this video if you believe truth should never be silenced. Subscribe for more stories that give voice to the unheard. And comment below, I hear you, Musa. Let's flood the world with his name. Let's make silence impossible.